Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever it is, wherever you are, welcome to the Good Values podcast. Now, in this episode, I speak to an artist who I was referred to from a previous guest. The previous guest being John Mahoney, who is an unbelievably good guest and an amazing artist. And he referred me to a couple of different people to speak to after him. And this guest was such a treat. A lovely person. We connected with certain shared interests. And he even recognised me from watching one of my videos, which was a great surprise for me. So without further ado, this is my conversation with Alex Castañeda. Okay, would you be able to introduce yourself for the audience, please?
Hi there. Yeah, I am Alex Castañeda. I'm an illustrator, fine artist. I'm originally from Peru, but I live here in California.
Oh, fantastic. How long have you been in California?
It's been 10 years now. I have a son, and he's the reason why I'm here. My wife is a resident, or was a resident here in the US, and since we have a child in the way, she was like, I don't want to lose my residency. So she wanted to have it here. But everything just worked just fine because part of my story is that California is one of the meccas for me as far as artists goes that I like. Let me tell you my story a little bit. When I was a student back in Peru, I got a email from the Wall Street Journal, and I thought it was a prank. I thought it was just a hoax. But it was the real thing. It was like, hey, we saw your work. They saw my paintings on skateboards, the nudes I have. They wanted to do an article about that. And I was just a student back then. I was like, what's going on, And it happened. And after that, a lot of clients came from California, wanted to buy my paintings. And I was like, California, that sounds really cool. Maybe I should check it out someday, Now I'm here.
So has your practice changed at all from when you were in Peru to now, living in California? Has that changed your practice at all with the location?
Well, yeah, I mean, like I mentioned, like a lot of my heroes, let's just call them that, are either from here or they come here for conventions and stuff. Like, for example, Ken Williams and Kim Jin-ji, he now passed, and many others. So I wanted to come here first of all to see the great artists and see how they work, how they are, how they function as just a person, because sometimes we forget they're human beings. We just see them as like, wow, this great artist slash god or whatever. But when I came here, I was like fascinated to just talk to them and be like, wow, you're a human too. You're like me, I have a chance to be like you then. So I learn a lot by just talking to them, for example, like Kim Jin-ji, he didn't speak English, but he was always like, we could always communicate with art and stuff like that. So I remember one time I gave him a little sticker. I make little stickers of all the drawings I do. I don't know if we can show them or not.
Maybe
YouTube will be like, hey, what's going on? But I see at my conventions and people used to give them a lot of gifts. Every 5 seconds people will come with a gift, give it to them. It's like an offering to the god, and I'm like, well, I'm just giving this little sticker, and it's just like a thank you, you're awesome. The next thing I know, someone's like, hey, Kim Jin-ji is live, your stickers on his drawing table. And I'm like, what?
That's incredible.
So he made me feel really special. So that I'll always remember that,
Yeah, so you got to meet him in person, yeah?
Yes, many times.
Oh, he's a lovely, sweet person. I met him once in person, and he asked me why I didn't bring 3 portraits I made of him. And I hadn't brought them because I thought there'd be a huge crowd and a barrier. And sadly, I was there stood just across the desk talking to him.
Hey, yes. I've seen that video. You have that video somewhere, right?
Yeah, have you seen it? It's my Kim Jong-il story.
It's
I had
you.
long
Okay.
hair at the time.
Wow. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
The internet, man. It's amazing.
Well, I'm glad you got to see it. But yeah, I was very sad that I didn't get to gift him that, because he's had a huge influence on me, as well as countless numbers of others. So a great loss to lose him last year.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Definitely. I know the feeling for sure.
Mm. Um, so yeah, I mean, I suppose, is there any kind of specific, kind of intrinsic, kind of cultural things in Peru that are embedded in your artwork that you bring to California with you? Because I can imagine that you have certain things that you learnt there and that you embed in your work as part of your culture. Is there anything that you know of that you have in your work?
Actually, I might be hated for just not thinking about just Peru, and I think more of the world. I consider myself someone from the world, because honestly, when I was a little, my dad used to work as an engineer, and we
Yeah.
moved around from country to country. It was crazy. Like every 6 months, there was a new country, a
Mm,
new way of thinking, a new way of talking, new friends from scratch, zero. And I guess that has to do with how I don't belong in one place. I'm always like, I go back to Peru. I'm not really like, people think, you're a fake Peruvian. You're not the real Peruvian. You know what I mean? Um, so yeah, I try to think outside the box when it comes to, like, I think there's great, beautiful stuff in Peru, but I'm like, when you are from over there, people are like, yeah, let's do something with Incas, like the culture, and
mm,
but that's always the thing. So I'm like, I mean, if we do that, that's cool, but there's more. There's
mm,
more outside. You know what I mean? So I like to think kind of like that, and I might be hated and I might be loved by some, but it's what it is. You got to do what you feel like doing. But you know, my journey here, it was funny because I don't know if you know Vargas, the illustrator.
yeah,
He's a pinup artist.
yeah. I think I do. I remember
Varga.
Fergus.
They
I don't know
call
if
him
I'm mistaken
Varga.
it for someone else. Yeah.
His name is like Vargas. Anyways, he does a lot of watercolor pinups. And he's originally from Peru. And I was telling this story yesterday actually. I met with an older artist from here. I actually live in Bakersfield, which is a city close to LA.
Mm,
Um, And when I met my wife, when we had our very first date, the first thing she told me was the story of Vargas and how, he's Vargas is Peruvian. He went from Peru to the US and found his wife here, and he made a great career for himself. And it was like an omen. It was like, why is this girl telling me this, And that's exactly what I did. I came here, and I dedicated myself to art and eventually grew. So it's just crazy. Yeah,
yeah.
and if you guys don't know Vargas, you should check it out. He's a great artist.
Well, I'll be sharing every time someone gets mentioned. I will be sharing some visual inserts for
Yeah,
to
yeah,
represent who it is. Um,
beautiful work. Mhm.
well, I'm not sure if I'm thinking of the right person, so I could be wrong there. So I'm keen myself to see. But as far as your child of the world, that's part of my tribe, so I completely stand with you on that. I'm not necessarily, adamant about representing whatever specific location people come from, but I did see in your work, because you have a lot of, obviously you've kind of got a great mastery over the female form, and I appreciate as well that it's not just the kind of stereotypical, especially impossibly slim female form. It'll be quite voluptuous and just beautiful representations of more realistic forms. Can you tell us about your thought process with representation in your work?
Yes, yes. I always say, it all started kind of like a selfish way, to be honest. Which is like, I do have that preference of girls. Like I always, when I was little, and I think back in Peru, that okay. Let's go back to that question. Back in Peru, we do like find those girls, like more voluptuous girls,
Mm,
more attractive,
mm,
rather than rest. the rest of the world. Actually, I blame the Kardashians that nowadays, things have changed now. People actually see these bodies and they're like, wow, that's beautiful,
Yeah.
But no, I always saw that as beautiful. I remember being a kid and looking at Rubens, the old masters,
Peter Paul
and
Rubens,
seeing
yeah.
those nudes, and I'm like, wow, what is this? It's a
Yeah.
sorcery, I wanna learn that. I wanna do that, It's
Yeah.
just human nature. You see something and you wanna that you admire and you wanna do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And yeah, but it just started with something like selfish like that. I'll be honest. But eventually something happened, like along the lines of doing that. I was growing my following, and all of a sudden I started getting messages from ladies, from girls, saying, "Hey, I saw your work, and I see my body type in your work, and because of your work, I'm loving myself more because I can see that I can be art." And it's just like very touching messages that I am like, wow, I didn't know I was doing that, but then I'm like, you know, that's amazing. That's just beautiful, that I can do that. Because when you're an artist, if you like trash can, or you like a street, or you like something that people would think you're crazy, what are you liking then? You have the ability, the skill to show people what you love, and they will see it and they will love it too. So I think that's the power you have as an artist. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
uh be an apple or whatever you want, whatever you like in the world, you will make it beautiful because that's how you see it.
Mm.
And when you find people like you and they get it, you're like, yes, you know what I mean.
Yeah. Well, it's a fantastic service for the public as well as for art representation, because I think it's underrepresented currently. So it's nice to see how well and how lovingly you render those images. So you must have an extensive background of life drawing and figure drawing practice.
Yeah. um Ever since, like I mentioned, like ever since being a little kid and looking at like encyclopedias, because now that encyclopedias, that's extinct now. Like we don't use this. I remember being a little kid having a library of big encyclopedias back in the house, and I was just looking. I just drawn into the art section,
Mm.
and like again, I'll bring Rubens, which I've been compared to, and it's a great compliment because
Mm.
Rubens is up there, and so, but if you see my current work for the last maybe 15 years, 20 years, all those ladies are actually my family. Like it's my wife. My wife is my main model, and her friends were like, "Hey, I think it's lovely what you do. I want to try modeling too." So her friends became my friends, and we became very close. Now even my goddaughter is also a model, and it's just like I tell people, it's the figure is just an excuse, like there's an ethos behind it, about the sensitivity of the woman, and for me they're just like this beautiful beings. Actually, I'll tell you something. I had a show in LA, and the biggest compliment I ever got as an artist, a lady was looking at my work in the wall, and she was like, wow, this woman's work is very sensitive. And I was like,
That's amazing.
that was like awesome, because that's
Yeah.
exactly what I want. Like I admire women so much. Like it's not the nudity. It's not like,
Not
it's just like
gratuitous, is it?
something beautiful, it's like
Yeah.
beautiful designs, and their soul and their heart. It's just one thing, you know what I mean?
Mm. That's lovely. That is such a compliment. That's
It
incredible.
is.
Well, uh, I suppose the only other thing as well is that I did notice that you have quite interesting inclusion of, say, horns or skulls and things like that get included in certain parts of your portraiture, which are really nice because I think that, well, then again, I did notice as well, like kind of straps of bullets and soldiers' helmets juxtaposed with the kind of delicate, nude form. which is a really nice thing to juxtapose together because it completely transforms each subject, really. And is that something you purposely try to find, something which is almost a polar opposite of, femininity, to kind of something which we attribute to either fear or kind of, non-life or something like that?
Absolutely. I think the spice of artwork is finding contrast between, for example, just the skateboard itself. I came out with that when I was looking at an art museum, and I see this very narrow painting of this Peruvian artist called Bacaflor, Carlos Bacaflor, and it was very narrow, and I was like, that could be a skateboard. I'm like, can you imagine a museum like an old fashioned painting of a lady in a skateboard? I mean, that's what I thought. I was like, that'd be crazy. I'll do it. So the fact that the skateboard is something very rough and something that, it's just like gets beat so hard, and it's just like a harsh material.
Yeah.
And then you have something soft like the female form.
Mm.
That's already a contrast, and the same thing goes with the compositions. You have a very beautiful lady, and maybe there's a sword or there's something like, because for the series of skateboards I've been doing, I imagine myself like having an army of ladies, like, it's like they're warriors, they're
Yeah.
beautiful, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
that's contrast. It's always like very, very important to artwork, I think.
So assuming that you are a skateboarder yourself, what's the best trick that you think you've got in your bag, and do you still practice?
You know what's very funny? I actually don't skate.
You don't?
I came here to California, and a friend was teaching me. I'm like, you paint them, but you don't skate. So how about I'll teach you? So I'm very amateur with
Yeah.
skating. Actually, I just like the format. It was perfect for a figure, and um, painting on wood. I don't know if you've done it.
I have.
It's very therapeutic. I like the texture and the
Yeah.
feel.
Well, with
So
the concave of the board, it must be quite interesting as well, because it's not just a flat wooden surface, it actually curves. I did skateboard myself for
exactly.
quite some time, so I can imagine that different sizes of boards offer different challenges, because some can be quite narrow and quite concaved.
Exactly. And that's another play of, the form and the subject matter, and, how everything's related.
Mm, that's lovely. Have you ever modeled yourself?
I've done a few. Actually, I've been part of a series of books called Hardcover. They are strictly erotic books. Like it's done by Spiridon,
Mm,
this German guy. He works with like Kim Yoon-ji and other great artists. And so he invited me over, and he was like, "Hey, Alex, like, you see my work. My work is really just figures. It's not really like erotic." But he
mm,
was like, "Hey, if you want to be part of this book, you got to do something else." I'm like, "Okay, I mean, to be part of those guys," I'm like, "Sure." So, there's nothing crazy, but I'll just tell you that in one of those, like, I have a little cameo.
mm. Really?
So
That's
it's
amazing.
it's interesting.
Yeah.
Um, I have a friend, one of my models. She's a great artist.
Mm,
And I always ask her, how do you feel to be, behind the easel, and, also, being, the model. So it's fascinating to me, Um, I always admire, you know, I'm gonna deviate a little bit.
please, yeah.
So I'm like, models on Instagram. I think it's fascinating for me, as a business point of view. I'm like, I'm here trying to draw these girls so I can sell products of them.
Mm,
These Instagram ladies, they are the product, they
mm,
are their own product. Uh, so I just take notes. I'm like, all the marketing, I want to learn that, because I have to say that if I have a weak point, I think it's marketing, and that's what I'm trying to learn, to push my own stuff. And I always admire those ladies that are putting themselves out there. They're the product. I'm like, you know, people don't see that. People just see the, oh, whatever.
Yeah, it's
The
a
other
different
side of
skill.
things.
Yeah, it's
Hmm.
another skill on top again, isn't it? To be able to actually sell as opposed to just present yourself. To actually sell yourself and be quite consistent is a skill in itself, a very professional
Yeah.
practice, I suppose. But speaking of
And
which, what's your?
mhm.
Oh, sorry, were you about to say something? Sorry.
No, we'll go back to it. It's just a
Okay,
little continuation.
I was just going to ask, what's your typical process as far as if you enter your studio each day, what would your typical process be? Do you find drawings? Do you have commissions waiting, or what's your typical day?
All of those, all of those.
Mm,
Um, it's an interesting question. Recently, I had a friend of mine. She's a local artist. She does something else for a living, and she was asking me that she wanted to try to be a full-time artist, but she told me, I don't always have the inspiration to do this. Sometimes I have it, sometimes, and I'm like, if you're gonna do this full time, that's that's how it goes.
mm,
Like, inspiration won't be there. Like, you just had to brute force it. Honestly, that's the only way. Whenever you do this for a living, because I do this 24/7. This is my bread and butter, and that's why I do little things like a big commission, like a painting, or I do a little sticker
mm,
or a shirt. Um, I'm actually doing also, besides teaching, because I've been teaching for 15 years too, and that's something I love. I love teaching. Something I realized later. Um, but I also host figure drawing sessions, which, by the way, this is, I don't know if you see
oh,
my
excellent.
shirt, but this is my logo. It's a little brand I did, which is all based. It's called Caffeine Heroes. It's all based on figure drawing.
Yeah.
Like you mentioned, figure drawing is a very important part of who I am, of my work, and in that I found a very, very special place. Just like for me, I need figure drawing for being better, for being
Mm,
like having the art muscles ready to draw, and finding people along the way that want to do it. It's just something for me very special. Like like I like going to the gym a lot every day.
mm,
And I like going with a friend, not just to have someone there to grow with, you know what I
mm,
mean? And figure drawing is the same. So back in Peru, when I finished studying, I started working at a video game company. We used to make video games for Cartoon Network and Nickelodeon and all these different companies.
mm,
And I found great artists that were working with me, and they were so talented. And I was like, wow, these guys are amazing. It's just like, and another thing, let me back in Peru, and maybe in the world too, we tend to look outside, uh, be like, oh wow, look at that art over there. It's so cool. But we never look inside. We never see, in our own surroundings, like there's great talent. So part of Caffeine Heroes was also showcasing the artwork of these artists that are unknown. Because
mm,
most artists, there's great artists out there, but there's great artists that are not good at talking or showing their work.
yeah.
So I wanted to be that person. I wanted to be that beacon so people can do that. So I started Caffeine Heroes back then, and it's been 13 years or
Really.
14 years. And so I did it because I was looking for figure drawings in Lima, and I couldn't find groups. So I made it myself.
Mm,
And when I came here to Bakersfield, California, I was looking for figure drawing groups too, and I couldn't find them. So again, I did it myself. Like I did it before, I did it again, and now we're growing. And now we have the Zoom event, which by the way, I wasn't very fan of at first. I'm like, I'd rather have the real experience of moving myself around and seeing the model change as I move. But this, just like we're doing right now,
Mm.
it it brings so much connection, you know?
Yeah.
Like you are in England, right?
Well, North Wales.
North Wales. Like you are so far. Like I started doing the Sufi drawings with Caffeine Heroes, and
Yeah.
now I have like French artists, Japanese artists drawing with us. And by the way, people I really admire, like I don't know if you follow video games, but I'm a good friend now with an artist from Capcom. I don't know, if it's Street Fighter. You know Street
Oh,
Fighter?
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
So,
Yeah.
anyways, he's part of the group too, and I'm talking to Jimmy Hewlett from Gorillas
Oh, wow.
about doing this, and it's just like it just brings the world into makes the world smaller, you know, and we are all connected, and that's the beauty of Zoom now,
Mm.
and just like this interview right now, you know,
It'd be very
it's a
difficult for
beautiful
me to
thing.
come and meet with you in person as opposed to, for me
Yeah.
bringing you to North Wales and for you bringing me to California there to speak with you. So it's nice like that. And to be honest, with Jimmy Hewlett, I can imagine your work meshing with a kind of tank girl aesthetic that he's worked on quite well. Actually, you've got a really
Oh
nice,
yeah.
yeah.
For sure. You just did an interview with my friend John Mahoney. One of those skateboards that I did was very heavily inspired by him. This
Mm.
lady with a gas mask,
Yeah.
and very, very John Mahoney-ish.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm always down to collaborate and things like that with other artists.
Excellent. Well, I was going to ask as well, with you teaching, have you ever done anything on, because I always feel like half of the job of a professional artist is problem solving, because usually it's finding a way out of mistakes or out of issues or out of just things that can be problematic. Now, when it comes to things like life drawing sessions, for me, problems are usually lighting. Lighting can be a real problem. If you don't have good lighting, say it's soft lighting, you don't have a good sense of light and shadow. What's what can you think of as a good way to render a figure, excuse me, and get around that problem of soft lighting and to try and really bring out some impactful form? Is there tricks around that type of thing?
Um, in my own work and then teaching, I always try to do hard light, dramatic light,
Mm,
because it defines the forms way more.
yeah.
Also regarding color, when you have a stronger light source, like a very warm light on top of a skin,
Mm,
colors are more saturated, and more saturated colors are easier to see for the beginner's eyes
mm,
rather than the grayish, more neutral tones.
mm,
And so I always make sure that whatever model I have, either for my classes or for sessions, they have a very strong light, and it's just more theatrical, more dramatic, and
mm.
it stays in your head too when you learn from it, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I suppose, are there any tricks that you could share with this audience as far as if I were to say, for example, things that recede into the distance have a blue tint. If you're doing a landscape, things become kind of bluish and more hazy and less sharp as they recede into the distance. Are there any tricks that you've learned through observation and through experience that you can share with people who are interested in this kind of level of experience and things?
So you mean like for example, color wise,
Yeah, color
for
seems to be, yeah, something which your students have mentioned that you teach, so that would be an interesting one. Yeah.
yeah, I think yeah, color is something I struggle with ever since I was a student, and maybe the reason why I try to teach, my goal as a teacher is to find a very digestible way of teaching, and a very like simple way. Like I had a lady, a 60-year-old lady, that she never did figurative work ever in her life. All she did was abstract painting, and I was able to guide her and do a nice still life. And in the end, she was like, "I did that." I'm like, "Yeah, you did. You just followed the instructions."
Mm,
So I always tell, like, I can make people be great artists, but not everyone has the right to wield such power.
Yeah. Yeah.
um yeah, color is it's beautiful. Like when people start with color, I start with the Storm palette, or the Palace palette as some call it, and you learn a lot of the cools and warms
Mm.
through that limited selection of colors. And you see how, there's a tug of war between the color of the light, the color of the subject, and it's it's a beautiful topic for me. I actually I did a series of painting classes with ArtStation.com, which got bought. They Epic Games bought ArtStation.com, and ever since they bought it, they made the classes free. So if any of you guys are interested, there's a free painting class, a free painting course at ArtStation. You can just go there and see. I think it's like eight classes,
Mm.
but I tackle everything from the beginning to the end. So if you're interested, you could give it a try, and I hope you learn, because I try to put all my tricks there.
I'll put the link in the description below for the
Yeah.
viewers, because it was always nice to share that knowledge. Okay, so that is part one of my conversation with Alex Castañeda. Now, it's true that is only part one, and next week will be part two. Conversations like this are hard to end, so that is why I've split it into two parts. So please check out next week's episode for part two of my conversation with Alex. Support him in the links in the description below. He's a fantastic artist, a wonderful person, and he deserves your support. And he's well worth your investment of checking out his work. And if you can support this channel, it would be greatly appreciated by leaving a like or comment down below. Subscribe to the channel. That's really important to me. If you subscribe, then my subscriber count goes up, and I am trying to grow the channel. Which another thing you can do to help that is to share this with friends and family. That type of thing really helps the channel grow. With your help, it will. I really appreciate you watching the video, and I will see you in the next episode.